place. This session is from web to mobile to app in 60 seconds, this is going to take a little bit longer than 60 seconds, by the way. So just so you know, yeah, doggone it. My name is Greg Brewis. Who am I? For those that don't know me, I am the principal evangelist for our open web technologies, as well as the group manager for our Creative Suite evangelism team. If you would like to hear what I'm having for dinner or where I'm hanging out, at Garazi, that's my Twitter handle. Be forewarned, I do tweet quite a bit, and my blog is assortedgarbage.com. And as the name implies, I write a lot of crap up there. So if you'd like to follow along, there's going to be some resources up there as well a little bit later. So we are talking about three things today in this session. I'm going to divide it up into basically three sort of blocks. First thing we're going to talk about is CSS3 Media queries, followed by jQuery mobile, and then last but not least, we're going to talk about Phonegap. So those are the three topics, and before I get into those topics, we gotta talk about going small. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, if you would like to ask questions, please feel free. Laugh at my jokes. You've already started that, and if you do have a question, feel free to shout out, and I'll try to get as many questions as I can answered as we go along. So now going small. What we're talking about is getting off of the desktop, right? Getting out of the browser as we know it, and beginning to move into these other devices. Whether we are talking about a larger device such as an iPad or a Galaxy Tab or some type of tablet, all the way down to the mobile phone. And there is one thing that if you do not take anything else away from Macs this year, and especially this session, take one thing away, and that is all web experiences do not have to be the same. Did you hear me? Did you understand that? Okay, I'm gonna back up for a second. For those of us who've been around the web for a long time, like myself, all through these years, for the last 15 years or so, we have struggled to make every site that we build look the same on every browser, including that one. Right, that one, right, exactly. And we all know the headache that has caused us, right? So today, with all those browsers out there, I mean, we're talking just on the desktop, there's, any number of browsers. But then when we add in all the mobile devices and all the browsers on all of those, I'm sorry to break the news to you, but you can't make it look the same. It's impossible. Stop the insanity. So actually, let's rephrase this. All web experiences should not be the same, okay? If you don't take anything else away, take that away. You do not have to make it all look exactly the same. Pixel perfection, that's fine. But the pixel on that particular screen should match that screen, right? That experience for that particular screen. So how do we do that? Well, we do that through CSS media queries, CSS3 media queries. Now, I said CSS3 media queries. Media queries are not new. The media queries have been around. They were even in CSS2. But with CSS3, they have evolved even further. And they are the key to this delivery of an optimum experience on the targeted device. You've probably heard the buzz out there in the web lately about responsive design. That's really, when you start hearing that, people go, oh yeah, CSS media queries, right? Media queries are a key component of that, but they are not the end-all, be-all to this approach. Of course, with CSS media queries, we can literally target we can target basically anything that we can find out about the device, and then based upon what we find out about the device, then react and provide something to fit that. The things that we normally think about are things as simple as width and height, or maximum width or maximum height. But I would encourage you to go up and take a look at all the spec actually, and see there is a boatload of stuff. I mean, even down to is it a monochrome display? I didn't even know monochrome displays existed anymore. But you can actually see bit depth and say, oh well, if let's say for example you're on an 8-bit screen. I don't even know if those exist anymore, but you could deliver something different, a different experience based upon that particular finding. All right, so there is a ton of stuff up there, and it's a really good read on that. So when we talk about CSS3 media queries, the way that we use them, there's actually two different ways that we can use them. The first, of course, is by linking to a style sheet. And you'll notice that the syntax there are very, very, very simple. Just simply saying media equals, and then this is my target. This is what I'm asking for. In this particular case, it says screen. So obviously, this would not be used if we were printing the page. But then it says minimum device width, for example, 800 pixels. You can combine these as well. So I've done that here, and I've said and orientation portrait. So basically, the only time that particular CSS file is actually going to be used is when that criterion is met. Now, the other way to do this is by including the media query as part of your CSS file. In other words, here I'm simply saying at media, which is the inside of the CSS file, which is the designation to say, hey, we're about to do a media query. And again, where are we doing it? For the screen. Then in this particular case, minimum width 400, maximum width 700, and then I'm increasing the body size in that. And this will just be lines in my CSS file. Now, which way is the right way? That all depends, right? But I would argue in many cases, I actually like this way a little bit better. And there's a reason for that. And we'll see if anybody got the reason. Maintenance? Well, okay, maybe. There's another, well, I'll hold off then. And we'll see what is the reason. But before we go there, another late breaking news item. Your browser lies. Seriously. Your browser lies. When you ask your browser, how big are you? Your browser very often simply lies. You see, because they are not reporting, or necessarily reporting the true size that they actually are. And this is a huge headache. This is absolutely one of the biggest frustrations with doing media queries. In fact, I discovered this on my own building a project when, for some reason, that media query was never being grabbed. It was never being used. And I'm going, what is going on? And I finally found out that my browser thought it was much bigger than it was. So that's what you need to be aware of. There is a way, however, to force the browser to report what it really is. This is a new meta tag called viewport. So it's meta name equals viewport, and then content equals width equals device width in this particular case. Now you could also say max device width, min device width, but I'm actually saying I'm just going through this one line, tell the browser, hey, quit lying to me. Tell me exactly what you are. Tell me what your actual size is. Now, if you'd like to see a test of this, I've actually got a page up on the web, and I'm actually going to show you that here. So here I am on my iPad, and right now it says, in case you can't see that, screen width 768, screen height 1024. Now, the gray box, when I tap that, however, you'll notice we're all saying, oh, it's 1024 by 768. Actually, it's reporting right now, I don't know if you guys can read that, 946 by 768. Huh? What happened? Let's actually go without the meta viewport tag. Did you notice how the entire page just changed? It seemed like it just shrank. And yet it's still reporting 768 by 1024. How can this be? Because what it's actually reporting here is 1208 by 980. Dude, what's going on here? All right, this is what I'm talking about as we are talking about what the browser is actually reporting back. Be aware of this. Decide up front how you're going to approach this. Me, I approach it with the meta tag in there on every site I build so that at least I have a baseline. I know generally how I can approach the creation of my media queries. All right? So, and again, this is a clickable link in the presentation, so if you would like to go test your own devices, then you can do that later. So, the reason I asked you earlier what was the right way or the wrong way is what gets downloaded. There was a big discussion when Ethan Marcotte came up with or coined the term of responsive design, and everyone started running around going, woo, all right, media queries, woohoo, I can put media queries in and I don't have to worry about anything. Wrong. Because what we found out, Stephanie, my wife, and I did a bunch of testing. I wrote up all of the results of the tests here on my blog. This is also a clickable link in the presentation to find out exactly what got downloaded. Does anybody know what gets downloaded? All of it, exactly. So I defined 4 or 5 or 6 different media queries to meet my various situations that I'm targeting. When I hit that page on my mobile device, every one of those style sheets gets downloaded. The content may not get applied, but it got downloaded. So going back to my question, which was the right way to approach your media queries? I would say, depending on what you're doing and how much you're delivering, it may be a smarter idea to put the media query inside of your single CSS file. Why? It's only a single HTTP request as opposed to multiple HTTP requests. Yes? Is that? Are we designing our apps to fix the mistakes for older browsers? I guess I'm not understanding exactly what you're asking. Should they work that way? Oh, you mean should the browsers not be reporting their actual size? I don't know. I guess I would like them to actually report the real size, but you know, I don't know. So yes.
Regarding all the media query CSS files getting downloaded, aren't all the assets in those CSS files also getting downloaded?
So that was the interesting thing. So the question is, when you're downloading all of these media queries, what is actually getting downloaded? I said the CSS files. Images are not necessarily getting downloaded. Like a background image, for example, will not get downloaded unless it's actually needed. Okay? Now, please be aware there's another, this is just completely off topic, but somewhat related. If you do, please never do display none to hide an image because you think that's the way it's done. Because if you display none, it still gets downloaded, okay? Because you might actually be using JavaScript to display block, right? So don't think you're hiding something, in other words, and my mobile guys are never going to get it. No, that 18 megabyte picture that you put up there, yep, I'm getting it on my phone, all right, even if it's set to display none. All right. One other little tip coming from the real world that helps on mobile sites. My favorite, all-time favorite, absolutely, I love this one new property in CSS3. It is called background size. Background size is a CSS3 property for background images that help us overcome some of these scaling issues, some of these fit issues. There are two new properties, cover and contain, that are part of that. And one other thing, you're going to see that in just a second, what it actually looks like. There is one little caveat. I'll leave it here on the slide, but I'm going to show you the implications of it in just a second. Finally, one last approach that you should be using, absolutely 100% in any site that you think is going to be pulled up on a mobile device. It is called the AppCache. AppCache is a new HTML5 API, if you will. And what the AppCache actually does is to say, I would like to store this for offline viewing. Now, that's cool, especially for me, because I make the joke. You know when we hear so much about the cloud? Even this morning. You know when the cloud sucks? When you're in it? Nope, when you're in it. When you're on an airplane and there's no internet access, guess what? Anybody ever done that? Pull up, you're leaving home, so you open your browser up, open 75 tabs, because you've got to have some reading on the plane, and then you accidentally bump one of the links or something, and boom, page is gone. Right? Using the AppCache, we can actually make an entire site clickable, viewable, workable, offline. Now, that's cool. You go, all right, well, that's great. Then when Greg's on the airplane, I can still view my site. But it's even more important when we are talking about these devices. Because using the AppCache means that the browser actually will look and compare and say, hey, I see this already, therefore I'm not going to request it again. So I can have your entire site here on my phone and not have to reload it over and over again. I was just at speaking at Flash on the Beach a couple weeks ago, and in their app, they built, for viewing on the phone, they built an AppCache. And it was funny because if you started the app in the browser, but it already had it, it said no data usage for you. Yeah, it's so, whoa, cool, all right. You didn't eat up my plan. All right, so how do you do this? Well, it's simple. All you need to do is create a file, and I'm going to show that to you in just a second, that has a file ending of either manifest or .appcache. And you set your server to serve that particular type of file. And boom, that's it. You suddenly have offline storage for your app. So let's go take a look at it in Dreamweaver. All right. First, I'm going to talk about, I'll show you that AppCache example first. So here in this particular page, so you can see this is how you do it. It's right here. AppCache or manifest is actually just a part of the HTML tag. That's all you need to add to the document. What that tells the browser to do is now I want you to go look at that particular file and figure out what I need to download. So if you'll notice, I have a file here. Oops. Hello. And that is what it looks like. Now, this is telling it what all the things are that I need to download. You can also specify that if you want to start looking into this, you can specify things to not download, things that you always want to have access, that you have to be online to access, and things like that. So it's really a nifty mechanism. The one question that comes up, though, is, all right, so I hit your site, I've got your manifest, and now what if you update your site? Well, very easy to overcome. That's why that little line is right there. All I have to do is change the manifest file, and that causes the browser to relook at everything. Okay? So if I was to update that to a 1.2, now the manifest will be reread and new things will be downloaded. And could you automate that? Certainly, certainly. So if I was to look at this over in the browser, you can actually see in your manifest, if you go in to your web inspector, here's the application cache, and there's all the things that it says it has downloaded. Okay? It's a really, really wicked way. Now I know because all those are there, I can turn my web server off, I can get on a plane, I can still click through everything in this site because it's all local. Okay? Cool? All right. So please consider that as you are working on your sites for offline viewing. All right, let's go to another example here, and we'll talk about that media query before we then move on to doing our other topics. All right, in Dreamweaver CS 5.5, by the way, you know, every time we bring out a new version of Dreamweaver, we always stand up here and tell you, this is the best version ever. So that I still can remain gainfully employed, this is the best version ever. And I'm serious about that, actually. I love Dreamweaver CS 5.5 because of all the things that we've done in supporting HTML5, CSS3, and so on. One of the really cool features that we have is that multi-screen button right here. Now, when I hit the multi-screen button, what you're going to see is the window divided into 3 sections. Representing my a default size for a phone, a tablet, and my desktop. Currently, obviously, everybody is getting the same thing. And just to prove that to you, I'm going to switch over. Oops. Switch over there. There we go. And you look at this on the iPad, there's that very same page, and you go, hey, it looks great, right? Looks exactly like I designed it over in Dreamweaver. Looks exactly like it looks in the browser. But the question that you have to ask yourself is that the optimum experience? And here's what I would say. Well, can anybody read that, by the way? No, that's why Steve gave us the double tap, right? Okay, I can read it. Great, thanks. So I'm thinking, hey, this is okay. You know, what doesn't matter. I can just double tap, right? That is until we get there. Anybody read that? Nope. Double tap. Any better? Nope. Some of us are getting slightly older. Yesterday was my birthday. And you know what that means? Meridian is home to countless exceptionally brilliant people. And I'm lucky to have the opportunity to sit down and talk with many of them. Okay? It's silly, but believe me, I've literally done this. And you go, okay, something's got to give, right? So there we are, talking about give me something that fits to my screen. Now, before I move off of this topic, I want you to notice one thing. We go out here, and we look at our page, you'll notice that we have a very large background image. Okay? That background image is actually filling the entire page. Right? Except here. In fact, it's not filling out my page. Why not? I want it to fill out my page, but it's not. So what do I need to do? I need to use, first of all, I've used something here called background size that I mentioned earlier. Let's go take a look at that and see that here is the background size. I've specified background size here I've set it to cover, and the other option, of course, is to contain. What are those two things? Cover means fill the thing out completely. Okay? Make sure you fill the entire screen or the entire area that I've attached this to. Okay? Warning, some cropping may occur. Okay? So it's going to fill out, but it may have to lop off part of the image. Okay? Contain says fill it out, but maintain your perspective and get the entire image into the viewport area, whatever that might be. Okay? Now, I've said cover, which means it should be filling out the entire screen, and yet it is not. After much head banging, I will share with you the little trick to make it actually happen. There you go. HTML, height 100%, save. Let's go back over here. And I will reload. And you can see that my image is going all the way to the bottom of the screen. Okay? So, now let's solve the problem of the experience. Going back over to my multi-screen here, I'm going to specify some media queries based on what I am targeting. By the way, you can change those target sizes if you would like to do so. Going into my media query, the first thing I'm going to do after deciding I'm just doing it for this particular document is make sure that that checkbox is checked. There is the media, that meta tag viewport that says, don't lie to me. Okay? So I've checked that. Now I'm simply going to say, all right, great. Then I need to make a media query. Media query, as we saw, consists of just simply saying, what are you targeting? So let's say, for example, large monitors. Who's got one of those nice Apple 30-inch displays? Okay. Anybody got an 800 by 600 monitor? No. Okay, didn't think so. All right. So I don't know how big that resolution is on that big Apple Cinema display, but I do know one thing. Most of us work at least at 1024 by 768, if not larger, right? So I'm going to just figure out a width that can be my cutoff point that says, from here on up to that Apple Cinema display, I'm going to deliver one type of experience. I'm just going to pick a number out of the air. I'm going to say 901 pixels. All right. Then I'm going to tell Dreamweaver if I'm going to create a new file or I'm going to use an existing CSS file. I'm going to use an existing CSS file that I have already created. Did you hear me? That I have already created. Somebody came up to me after our presentation and goes, so where's the button that where Dreamweaver creates the CSS for me? I go, it got hidden. No, it's not there. Okay, so we're going to go in and just pick out a CSS file. There we go. We'll do the exact same thing again, this time for, let's say, tablets. Now, tablets, again, getting very interesting these days in terms of the sizes. But I'm just going to say for my tablets, I'm going to go with a maximum width of 900. Now, on the Galaxy tab, that would mean when is the Galaxy tab going to use it? Yes, it will, but only in one condition, when it's held like this. When it's held like that, it would give the larger view because this is a 1280 wide monitor. Okay? So that is also something that happens with media queries. The browser reads the media queries and gets prepared to react to them. Hence, why did all of those those CSS files come down to you? That's why, because it has to be ready to switch if the conditions change. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and grab my tablet CSS. And then finally, I will do phones. And I'll just say 480 is the maximum width for them. Okay, so now I have done this, by the way that I like to do it, and that is from large to small. Okay, so that's the order in which I do it, because I just find myself eliminating more and more and more things as I go along. So, you do it the way that you want, but bear in mind that the CSS, if you have a CSS file that is applied that meets two of the criterion, then both of those things are going to get applied. So you need to think about the order in which they are getting applied. Okay? So now, look what has happened. We have, in the desktop, we have 3 columns. In the tablet, I now have a single column. In the phone, single column, but anybody ever on your mobile phone ever been in the browser and clicked on the wrong link? I can ask that question because that's like saying, who uses Photoshop? Everybody's done that because those links are so hard to hit, right? So here's what we've done. I've taken the navigation bar that's up here and I actually moved it down into some nice big fat buttons for my big fat fingers to easily hit on screen. Okay? So to prove that this actually worked, we'll go ahead and save this. Look back over here, hit refresh, And you can see there, I now, on my iPad, have that, just turn the phone off instead. Refresh here, and boom. So same content, different experience, okay? That's what we need to be doing. Now, I don't know if it's ever happened to you. It may not have happened yet, but at some point it will, so I want you to be prepared. Your client might change their mind, okay? So if it happens, okay, if it happens, and the client goes, hey, I don't like the buttons. You know, they're too big, they're too small, they're not sitting in the right place, or whatever on the phone. How do you change that? Well, obviously in the CSS. But how do you actually see it? Well, in Dreamweaver CS 5.5, we've got a really cool new feature, which is called the Media Size Manager, or Window Size Manager, excuse me, and it allows me to switch the live view to match what I'm anticipating or needing to look at. So let's say go to the tablet view, and that's the tablet view. Or let's actually go to the smartphone view. Now, had I even done some add on to my media query to do something like my orientation, I could even say, well, let's see, what would it look like as a landscape as opposed to a portrait? The cool thing is, I'm still in Dreamweaver. So I'm going to go into split view, and here we see my mobile CSS, since that's the one that I was working on for my phones. I'm just going to go and say, all right, well, you know what, let's move the buttons up just a little bit. Boom, there you go. So I'm actually seeing everything as it happens according to whatever media query has been queried and is being applied right now. Cool? All right. So, but that's the web. All right. So let's move on to those the other two topics. The web, of course, I mean, when I look at a website like this, it feels like a website. It doesn't feel like a native application. So there are those out there who think, well, you know what, my website needs to actually, if it's going to be on that small screen, it should actually adapt itself to feel more like that type of experience, right? So how do we do that? Of course, the answer is either manually, you go do it all, or a better solution. And that would be jQuery Mobile. So what is jQuery Mobile? jQuery Mobile is a unified user interface system across all popular device platforms built on the rock-solid jQuery and jQuery UI foundation. That's straight off of the website. I love the rock-solid jQuery, yeah. All right. So what does that mean in plain English? Well, it's literally just a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay? So that makes our phone experience, or our site, feel more like a native phone, if you will, experience. Okay, so why would you choose jQuery? There's other frameworks out there. I would say the number one reason why I would choose it, it's jQuery. I'm already using jQuery. I use jQuery on every project I do. So that's great. It's also HTML5. Woo! And you got to do that, right? Okay. Even better, it's progressively enhanced, meaning that as better browsers, better devices hit that site, they get a better experience. But the devices that can't necessarily do something, it degrades gracefully and still works. Okay? And you don't even have to worry about it because it's all part of the framework, which is really nice. You can also roll your own themes. And in case you did not hear, the jQuery mobile project, I know that we all went to the keynote this morning. Yes? Okay. There was actually a bunch of other announcements that we made that were not mentioned in the keynote. One of which is that there is a new theme roller coming for jQuery mobile. So that's pretty cool. Even cooler, you know who built it? We did. Exactly. So that's the engineers that we have dedicated to the jQuery mobile project have built this new theme roller. And of course, that means there's also all sorts of widgets that we can use. Now, one thing that you need to know, another piece of news. This morning, they actually released version 1.0 of jQuery mobile. Okay? In your copy of Dreamweaver CS 5.5, you've got a really old one. Okay? And so you will want to go and update your copies of jQuery. Well, you don't have to, but if you would like to, then you should update that. And it's very easy to do. Involves just swapping out some files in your configuration folder. I've got a blog post that links over to that on my blog as to how you go about doing that. Okay, so you can update to the latest and greatest. So let's talk about what it means to build a jQuery mobile page. The first thing that we need to think about is that a jQuery mobile project or site, if you will, it can consist either of a single page or multiple pages, just like we're used to. Okay, so we're not changing our thinking. But one thing that you need to realize is we can't make the entire site self-contained in one page itself by identifying certain areas as pages. Okay? And jQuery mobile will take care of hiding and showing them properly. The way we do that is we use, in fact, throughout jQuery mobile, the jQuery mobile project, we make extensive use of an attribute called data. Data is an HTML5 attribute. You can put it on literally any element. It's an HTML5 element that it says data dash. Everything that goes after the dash is free for you to decide. Okay, you make it up. All right, you decide if you need something, you need to be able to identify something, for example. If I have time, I'll show you a site that I actually used this to actually calculate the height of an object because I was dynamically changing the height of things on a page. And so when the page loads, I actually stored everything via jQuery into a data attribute so that I didn't have to do it over and over again. Okay? So what does a page look like? Well, every single page follows the same basic structure. It has to consist of a page. Now, a page in this particular case is listed as a div. It does not have to be a div. It can be literally anything. It could be a list item if you wanted. Okay? Then it also needs an area that says data role content and data role footer if you would like to have a footer. Now, there are a few page limitations that I want you to be aware of, and that is that because of the way we move between pages, you cannot use deep links in your pages. In other words, you cannot say index.html # some anchor, okay? Because that anchor is actually being used to identify and move between pages. Now, the other thing that you need to be aware of is that when we call to a page that has that data structure, whatever the first element is that we hit that has a data role equals page, that's what will be displayed. Okay? You can, however, target other ones. All right? And finally, there is built-in error handling as well. So if something happens on the way to that page, jQuery Mobile will take care of telling the user, hey, an error has occurred, I couldn't load the page or whatever. Okay? One great thing is that to make this feel more like a native app, then we can do headers and footers so that they actually feel like you're used to seeing on your iPhone, that black bar or blue bar or whatever at the top or the bottom. We can also even make these persistent across the entire app so you don't have to constantly change the HTML to identify these things. Finally, we also can do some dynamics, and I'll just let you read all of that later. The thing that is really cool, though, is that the data attribute has a whole bunch of other roles, not just page. So we have a button. We have collapsible objects. We have a collapsible set as well. I'm just going to fly through these because you'll be able to read these later. We have content. You saw that already. A control group, which allows us to group things together. Containing fields to easily style forms. We have our footer that I talked about. You can have a role as a header, a role as a list divider, a role as a list view. By the way, list views are really, really cool in jQuery Mobile. You can have your nav bar, obviously. Also, what happens if JavaScript is not available? And if you don't want something styled by jQuery. And finally, a page. And there's even a nifty thing called a slider that is not actually a slider. Hence the name. Yes. And Actually, what it actually does is make buttons. You know, you have on your iPad when you go Wi-Fi on or off, you've got that little button that slides to the side. That actually can be created with one line of code in jQuery Mobile. Okay. And as well, as I said, we can skin all of these through the 6 pre-built themes, or if you want, you can build your own theme as well. Finally, in order to help lay things out, there's also a grid-based system in jQuery Mobile that allows you to easily lay things out and adapt to multi-sizes of screens. So, finally, the part that probably is the sexiest, if you will, of jQuery Mobile is transitioning between pages. To give it that native feel, you know, if you're in a browser on your mobile device, you click a link, what happens? I mean, after the long wait, right? Suddenly the page goes, boop, it's there, you know. In an app, you click on something, you touch something, there's always an animation of some kind. You know, it slides over, falls over, flips over, whatever, right? And that is also built into jQuery Mobile as well. So there's all sorts of transitions. So let's go take a look at that. I'll do that by just switching over. And yes, I forgot to delete that, so I will just delete this stuff. Boink. All right. I've got a blank site, nothing in there, and I'm going to start a new project. That new project, instead of using the starter layouts that we traditionally use to build sites in Dreamweaver, I'm going to switch over to Page from Sample, where you will see a category called Mobile Starters. There are 3 different starters. All of them say jQuery Mobile. The difference is how we get the jQuery. Okay? You see jQuery Mobile CDN. That means we're actually linking out to the jQuery site, so you're always up to date because we're getting the jQuery from them, okay, from that site. There is jQuery Mobile Local, which means that we are going to use a local copy. That copy that you just updated in Dreamweaver in your configuration folder, that will now be copied into your site. Finally, there is a third one, which is exactly the same as this one, except it adds on one more piece of JavaScript, and that is Phonegap, the Phonegap framework, which we will talk about in a minute. But I'll go ahead and just choose that one, say create, and you can see as I save my page, I'll just call this index, Dreamweaver is immediately going to say, hey, do you want me to copy over all those files that we've just been talking about? Yes, I do. Thank you very much. And they are now over here in my site. Now, what does this page actually look like? Well, let's go ahead and make it fit into a smartphone size. Turn on our live view so we can see. Here's what a default jQuery mobile page will look like. Now, this jQuery mobile page, as I click, you can see, well, before I do so, you see page 2, page 3, page 4. If you look in my HTML, those are just list items. Okay? Those are an anchor. And that anchor is, as I said, linking to something, in this case, page 2. And if we look further down here, there is the ID of page 2. Okay? So that is, again, why I was saying we can't do deep linking, because we're using that as our navigation. So what happens when I click there? You'll notice that nothing else is here, but as I click on page 2, boom, we have an animation that was sliding over. You'll notice a back button automatically created. Click on that, takes us back. Okay? So I say, okay, great. What it's doing is it's actually showing and hiding the divs that we're asking for and then doing a jQuery animation. Now, if we wanted to change that, let's say, for example, let's just start by doing a little fun theming. I want to change the look. Right now, that black look, I'm bored with it. So let's go data, and you can see here is that data object that we were just talking about. So I'm going to choose the data object, and there is a boatload. All of these things come from jQuery Mobile, okay, and tie into that data object. So I'm going to go data and then theme. Now, Dreamweaver immediately is going to tell me, okay, here are your options. These are the 6 built-in themes. Which one would you like? I'm going to go with B, and we'll click back over to let it update, and there we have an old-school iPhone look. Okay? Now, the one thing to note, as I move between pages, that theme I applied to the individual page. Yes, you can do global theming, but it requires you writing a little bit of JavaScript. Okay? So now I've got that. That's great. All right, looks good. But the one thing that's bugging me is, ever seen an app where your footer is all the way up in the middle of your screen? Nope. I don't want that. I want it to actually sit at the bottom. iDevices, do they do fixed positioning in the browser? No, they don't. Ooh, that sucks. But jQuery Mobile can, even on an iDevice. How do we do it? Well, we're going to go right down here into that div, data role equals footer, and say data. And we have a nifty little option called data position, and we say fixed. And now, my footer drops to the bottom. Now, one of the really cool things is, you can even have these show and hide as well. So we have another data attribute on that data position, which is also full screen. So I could actually assign full screen to my page. So if I did data and position, I can actually do full screen, and this came in late after I'd already finished Dreamweaver. And then that will mean that page 2 will actually go full screen as soon as I put some more content in there, and have the navigation disappear, the headers and the footers disappear. So that's pretty cool as well. All right, now, let's say I didn't want that slide happening left and right. It's just doing that left and right thing. I don't like that. All right, let's do a different one. Again, all we need to do then is go to the link that triggers the animation and drop back into data again. And this time, we go data and then data transition. And we see we've got several. Now, there's fade, flip, pop, slide down, slide up. Be careful with that one. That is actually the one that turns over, looks like a card being turned over. Works beautifully on iDevices. On certain Android devices, not so good. In fact, it doesn't flip. It spins. So be careful. Make sure you test it out a little bit if you're going to use that one. Okay, but let's go slide down, for example. Choose that. Now, let's see, what was that on page 2? So as I click, watch what happens. Boom, page 2 slides down. When I hit the back button, boom, it slides back up. So it's always a reverse procedure happening. Okay. Now, there's a whole bunch of other things I can do and add to this page. In fact, Dreamweaver actually has all of these widgets built right in. So things like those collapsible boxes that I was telling you about, accordion kind of things. If I want to add, though, a new page or call to an external page, there is one key thing that has to happen. I'm going to go ahead and just create for you just an absolute blank page. And then save this. We'll call this external. Saving it into the same site. Now, going back over to my index page, I'm going to say, let's get a new, in fact, let's instead of linking over to page 4, I'm going to say we're going to link over to that external.html file, just like that. Now, if I save this, I'm not going to show you this to you in Dreamweaver. I love Dreamweaver. This is the best version ever. But if I actually do this right now, it will break. Dreamweaver will hang because it can't find the page. So I'm going to do this actually in the browser so you can actually see this happen. So let's click page 4. It said error loading page. Now, you guys all saw me link to that page, right? We absolutely 100% know that page is out there, doggone it. So why didn't it give me the page? The answer is, let's go ahead and return back over here. The answer is we are missing one thing from the page. It actually did find the page, it just didn't know what to do with it. Okay? Because what we're missing is that. Every page loaded into jQuery Mobile must consist of that structure. Now, it doesn't have to be divs. As I said, you can use any elements. I can have list items if I wanted. But something in there has to be identified as page. Okay? So now if I just went in here and said, hello world, save this. Now, hello world. Not a problem at all, because it identified a page structure and said, dude, I know how to handle this. Here we go. All right? So be aware of that. All right. So a whole lot more that I can do there, but let's move on to that third topic, and that is Phonegap. So what is Phonegap, and why should I care? Well, first of all, it's an open source framework that used to be built by a little company called Nitobi out of Vancouver, Canada. I said used to be. Do you know who it's built by now? Us! Yeah, we bought them this morning. So that's pretty cool. I was giggling in my chair as I was watching Twitter and the whole thing going by. So we actually own Phonegap now. Although it is open source, we have contributed it to the Apache Foundation. It will remain open source. All the engineers at Nitobi are just giggling too, because now they don't have to do any consulting work anymore. They can actually just sit and work on Phonegap, and they will continue to do that. So what does it actually do for us? It gets us out of the browser, if you will. Out of the browser and onto the device, and allows us to interact with the things that are going on a device. Geolocation, for example, all of you, you think about, we pulled up Google Maps, right? It knows where I'm at, okay? The app was using geolocation. Can you do that in your browser? Yeah, absolutely. Your browser actually supports geolocation. So I do not need to use Phonegap to do geolocation in an app, okay? But anything else that my phone can do, such as the camera, compass, file system, contact list, all of those things, my browser, don't tell him, but my browser thinks it doesn't actually know that it's running on a phone. It actually just thinks it is, It doesn't know it's running on a phone. It doesn't know anything about where it is, okay? It could just as easily be on a desktop, right? That's what it thinks. But sorry, I'm getting somebody calling me right now. So it thinks it could be on a desktop. I have to, or I want to, access all the other things that are on my phone. Things like being able to dial, things like the camera, things like I said, the contact list. And that's what Phonegap allows us to do by providing a native wrapper around all of this that allows us to access this. And then, the final piece, then turn it into an actual native app. So when we do a native app, that means we're now talking to the hardware. So Phonegap provides a JavaScript function called device ready. This event is where you are going to be writing all of your code in the device ready function, and that is going to say, hey, Phonegap is loaded on the device, we're ready to go, we now can do whatever. We can access your camera or whatever. What, again, can we access? I mentioned a few: accelerometer, camera. We can capture audio and video. Use the compass. Test your connection. Tell you whether or not you even have a web connection. Access your contact book. Tell you about the device you're running on. So I could say, hey, I know that Steve is running on an iPhone and Greg's running on an Android phone or whatever. We have all sorts of events that happen on a phone, like the battery event, telling me my battery is dying or anything like that. We can access all of those. The file system itself, geolocation, as I mentioned. We can also even play back media that is on the device. We can do notifications as well, and then access the storage or SD card or hard drive, if you will, of your phone. Okay? What does all of that look like? Just to give you an example, the camera API goes through the navigator object. All the things in Phonegap go through the navigator object, and we just simply say something like get camera, and we can actually even specify where the phone is getting its information from. So let's go take a look one last time over here in Dreamweaver at that. I've got a little mobile example. I will provide you a link to the source of this. Just to give you some ideas as to what this can do. So I've got a nice little example of all those type of things like loading an external file and so on. You'll notice there's one, for example, where am I? If we click on that and then I wanted to find me, I could click this button to have it actually go out and find me. And that is going to use geolocation. And again, you can actually see that in the Find Me button, the Geo button right here, all I'm simply doing is saying, please go out, get my geolocation. And again, Dreamweaver is providing code hinting for all of these things as well. So as you select one of those items, then we will complete that, for example, a camera, and then say, okay, what can the camera do? Well, the camera can get pictures and so on. All right. So in this particular case, this is a geolocation. It's simply saying, go get my position, and after you do so, do something on success, do something on fail. Here's what it is actually doing. It's going to tell us it found us, and then pull up a map to tell us where we actually are. Using the camera, exactly the same kind of thing. So in this particular case, I would go take a picture, and I'll click this Take a Shot button, obviously, and this is going to do exactly that. It's going to say, okay, access the camera, go get a picture, and then after that, I'm going to actually tell you what the name of the picture is on the device in case you want to access it later and pull it back up. All right? All of that, I was able to code without leaving Dreamweaver. I want to show you what this actually looks like now. Wrong device. Helps if you got the right device. By the way, if you ever see me in airport security, don't get behind me. Yeah, serious. All right, so here we go. There's that very same app. Now, how did it get on my phone? Because this is not a browser. This is actually an app. How did it get there? Well, before I finish showing you, once I'm done with my app, I'm going to go up to my site menu, go to Mobile Applications. Choose, first of all, before you get started, you have to do your application framework, which simply means downloading the Android SDK as well as the iOS SDK in order to be able to build my application. Then I'm going to specify things about my application, things like what's the version number, do I want a custom icon, do I want a startup screen, and so on, what versions of the application or the platforms am I looking at. And then, once I'm ready, we'll just go and say, all right, let's build for an iPhone. Whoops, I need to save my change here. Let's go ahead and save it. And now, say, let's build for an iPhone and actually see it running. And then I will show you the very same app running on an Android application. There it is. It's popped up. Now, I'll go say, where am I? Can you find me? My app's being told, hey, I want to use your location. Is that okay? Yep, absolutely. Oh, here's exactly where we are. Did you guys know you're at 34.0440? No? You didn't know that? Well, that actually is located right there somewhere. So there you go. So we're actually accessing hey, CJ, tell Heidi to quit calling me. I'm in the middle of a presentation. So we're actually seeing the app running in the emulator on the iPhone. What has actually happened, however, if you look out here on my desktop, we have a folder, and this is the folder structure that we have actually just created for you, and we've also built the entire application, the IPA file, if you will, that is actually in the running in the iPhone simulator right now. So then on the Android, it's going to look just like this. That is if get there we go. Okay, here we are again. So I'm going to go add a note here and just say hi, and oops, save that. Where did that just save it? I'm actually using local file storage here in the example so that I can actually go look at my note list. Oh, there's my note. It says hi, right? So I'm accessing the actual storage of the phone. Let's find out where we are, so make sure we haven't moved. Oh, yep, I did it a little bit earlier, so we can see that we're actually still where we were. Going back over, say, let's take a picture. So I'll hit take a shot. Now, that navigator.camera just said, okay, I'm passing you off to the hardware on the phone, to the camera. Guys, smile for me. There you go. All right. There's the wonderful picture. All right, there it is. I'll go ahead and save that. And now we're returning over here. Whoops, turning. There we go. And there you guys are. And you can actually see that that is called 2206 on my phone. Okay, so if I ever wanted to access that phone, that camera again, I can simply call that right back up. So with the skills that I have as a front-end developer building HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, not only am I now capable using CSS3 Media queries to adapt a look to my website to fit those different form factors. If I would so desire, I can go beyond that and begin providing websites that feel native, or if you want to go all the way and go native, then I can do that as well using Phonegap, packaging it all up. Okay? And with that, right on time, thank you very much, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Now, I'm around for questions if you have any.